side, the Mundo banned again, this time on the blue side though. So really, Dial's really respecting it, probably from Minky, and there it is. The first ban Hecarim finally coming through for Legacy.
Took 4 games between Legacy and the Dials, but finally the Hecarim is banned. Maybe it was what we were talking about. Maybe it was just going for those mind games, giving them their best champions, and then finding a way to beat them and demoralize the Dials. Well, Legacy, I hope you're not the ones demoralized, because Dials have looked pretty good with their best champion.
Yeah, Zed ban there as well by Dials. Another ban against Choo-Choos that we saw in Game 1, and Kalista, another ban. So keeping consistent with some of these targeted bans, but we'll see what Dials are going to mix up. And Legacy, you know, will they ban the Zerath? Will they aim it sharp at all? They ban the Karthus. Something's going to be left open that we didn't see already just based on the Hecarim ban alone. So Dials, 8 seconds left. What do you want?
I have to think Dials don't really need to change anything up. They looked great the previous game. They always looked in control. They will ban the Rek'Sai on blue. They took it away on red, but want to ban it on blue. I guess they expect it to come through in the next 2 rounder picks, and they don't want to first pick it.
I mean, Soulstrike's such a strong player, but like you said, probably don't want to first pick it given how that works out. So Legacy going to see what they want for their 3rd ban now. Just 12 seconds or so left until they have to decide on it. Is Sejuani.
Okay, Sejuani still strong. This patch has been toned down. The Northern Winds damage has been toned down a little bit, but still very powerful. Still has that great initiation. Who's left up by Sion? And look, if you've been watching the OPL, you know Sion's going to be first pick.
Yeah, Sion really strong and a favorite laner for a lot of these top lane players. Could, of course, be a jungle. Soulstrike's actually the only player in the OPL regular split to have a jungle Sion game, I believe. So could take that there. Bit of a flex pick, but taking it away from Minky, force him to play something else. And Legacy, these better be 2 real strong picks.
You have to think it's probably not going to be a Perfection champion. Just because Perfection, he likes to have a bit of the carry. He likes the Cannons and the Hecarims of the world. He can still play it, but even though there was that slight tweak, that 10% damage nerf to monsters on the queue, still very viable in the jungle. There's the flexibility, but here come the lock-ins from Legacy.
Yeah, and Legacy taking it almost all the way back. Minky going to get his Aurelia, so a bit more carry potential rather than a big super tank. But Sivir is back. Haven't seen her in a while. Popped up a lot in the first few weeks of the OPL, but dropped off until playoffs, it seems like.
I mean, there's plenty of speed synergy between Aurelia and Sivir, launching that Sivir jointing that Aurelia into the backline with the On the Hunt. And of course, Sivir has that, Aurelia has the natural tenacity, can do big things in the backline. We've already mentioned Sion can't really pressure these champions like the Hecarims, like the Cassidans of the world. So maybe that's why. Happy to go the Aurelia. Going to be happy to farm up. Can split most lanes and do just fine in this one.
Yeah, denies the Sivir Sion potentially as well. Sure. And I think King's shown a lot of Graves, shown a little Lucian. Sivir's probably fine in those particular spots. But the Direwolves now, a few more picks to make here for their 2nd and 3rd, and 10 seconds left. I don't know if the comfort's not here. We could see the Zerath. There's plenty of options open. Morgana would make a lot of sense given how strong Ejim's looked on that champion. They are going to take it away in a very late lock-in, but they do take Lucian again.
Obviously a lot of questions, a lot of talking coming in the Direwolves chat. They're not being able to decide right to the last second. They go for the same bottom lane. Of course, as you mentioned, Morgana has that flexibility. We've already seen it, and I believe both mid and top coming through from the Direwolves. They have a lot of flexibility in those picks, and they still show nothing.
Yeah, mid, top, and support, of course, for Trevor's last game. So they played it everywhere almost. You know, missing the jungle and AD carry, but sure.
This time.
Yeah, this time. Hey, who knows? The Direwolves they've mixed it up before, but we'll see what they do want to go with. I do like the Lucian from King, very consistent, fine in the Sivir lane. You have to think, not too much going on there. Probably a lot of weight.
I mean, he struggled in lane though, remember. Gave that early double kill up to Tallywacker, so he was able to get back in the game. His positioning in fights and the escape proved invaluable in the replay that we showed post-match. So, look, it's very powerful in this patch. You see carries across the world flocking back to Lucian just because he has a bit more tank busting in the late game. Late game builds, late game champion. King, he's their carry, and he's done very well on that champion.
Yeah, and sort of fits the power curve that Dials tend to like to play on as well. But I love this from Legacy. Aggressive support for Ejim. That makes plenty of sense. Leon is going to be his, but Jarvan taken away from Soulstrike. So maybe there is a jungle Sion all along, because his 2 main junglers have already been picked or banned away.
Yeah, 4-1 Jarvan, now 4-1 Rek'Sai was his record on those 2 champions. Both of them unavailable. One banned by Direwolves themselves, and the other one taken away here by Legacy. I think it's going to be the jungle Sion, but it might not be. I don't know what to expect here. Maybe a Cannon. I mean, there's no hyper carry to peel for, but that feels like the next champion that would really complement this comp and Perfection in particular.
I mean, it does have to play against Aurelia, who has very consistent laning against most of the top lane.
It's a good laning matchup for Aurelia, as you mentioned as well.
So we'll see. I'm not too sure. They could, of course, swap the Morgana to the top. They've done that as well. There's actually a lot of flexibility here for the Direwolves. So these last 2 picks will complete a very interesting looking team comp, and we'll give them a bit of time. We've seen a bit of Nautilus towards the end of the OPL, but don't know if we'll be seeing him again.
To wait and see. We'll see how it shakes out. The Ahri blind pick in the mid lane will be just fine. Sharp late to that champion, but of course has the wave clear that he's used to from Xerath. Has the assassination potential as well. It's definitely a more lane dominating champion that we usually see from Sharp, but something different from the Direwolves.
Yeah, and it is Nautilus Ahri there coming through, and you have to think that's jungle Nautilus, I guess, given the way the lane check out.
There's a lot of flexibility here, Pastry Time.
There is, and Legacy probably going to wonder, where's everyone going? Because we have to make a last pick, and I guess they're making a mid pick, so they'll try and counter pick for Choo-Choos, but you don't really know how the rest of that shakes out, and that's scary to look at.
And the flexibility continues. The last lock-in is Lissandra. Probably going to be a mid-lane Lissandra. I mean, really a mid, maybe in solo queue, but not so much in competitive. So much flexibility on the Direwolves side. Jungle Nautilus, I believe it's our second Jungle Nautilus so far in the OPL, seems to be locked in.
Yeah, so going to take it away. We've seen Nautilus be quite successful, particularly good against some of these short-range late-game carries. Kalista coming to mind immediately, but against Sivir, a bit of a weird pick there, you have to think.
As you say, one of the more safer AD carries with that spell shield, as you mentioned. This is a very low damage comp coming through, and there's a last-second swap as well. We're still not 100% sure. Top lane Nautilus is seeing a bit more popularity. Maybe that's what we'll see.
I mean, it sort of makes sense for Perfection. He likes his high-impact ultimates. Soul Strikes, again, has only shown Sion and Gragas in the jungle outside of Jarvan and Rek'Sai, and he's only had a win on Sion, so have to think he wants to go for comfort. Already had 2 junglers picked or banned away, and we'll give him a couple more seconds, but Perfection is going to be playing top lane Nautilus in Game 2.
So top lane Nautilus, it's come back, but what build is he going to go? How is he going to impact? Can he even 1v2? These are all questions that I'm ready to have answered.
Yeah, you know what? We're going to get a couple more answers. Let's throw back outside to Atlas.
Thank you very much, Pastry Time, and I'm here yet again with Radier after that ridiculous draft. Nautilus top coming through, and you were letting me know that Perfection, he's been playing that a little bit.
Yeah, he has been playing a little bit in solo queue, and when you think about it, it can work. Nautilus with items is a very, very scary champion. I mean, a lot of tankiness, a lot of CC, a lot of engage, a lot of everything. And, usually he's stuck in the jungle, he's focused a lot on ganking, and he doesn't get his items quite well, but, with someone like Perfection who's really good at farming, really good at getting ahead, it'll be interesting to see how well let's say a Nautilus that is ahead will do.
Yeah, well, let's see, and we'll see whether Minky Wow can deal with that, of course, on a comfort pick in that Aurelia. But let's go to the jungle matchup here as well. I mean, Soul Strike's bringing out that Sion jungle, and have you been seeing that one cropping up in solo queue as well? Because he's looking very, very strong in that champion if we take his last performance into account. Yeah,
I think jungle, if you ask anyone in solo queue about Soul Strikes, everyone says he plays Sion jungle. And I played with him a couple of times. He is very proficient on that champion, so it is another comfort pick for him. Direwolves getting another comfort pick. And I think with the Sion and Nautilus, there's going to be so much CC and tankiness. I don't know if Legacy will be able to deal with that.
Yeah, well, we'll see whether they can. Legacy came up with a massive sort of engaged comp here, but the thing that sticks out to me as far as the Direwolves are concerned is Sharp's pick of the Ahri here in the mid lane. Of course, not quite having the same wave clear potential, the safety in farming, more of an assassin type.
Yeah, I mean, you rarely see Sharp, play assassin type champions. Usually play Xerath or Azir. But I think just based off history, he can be effective on Ahri, and I'll see what he can do.
Yeah,
we'll see what he can do.
We'll all see what he can do when he gets into the matchup. But going back to the bottom lane, of course, where you're most comfortable, Mr. Radier, of course, playing the bottom lane for the Chiefs, who are going to be playing tomorrow. So we're going to have to let him go pretty soon so he can practice for that one. But Sivir and Leona, there's a lot of burst damage there. But how's this going to go against the already tested Morgana Lucian lane that did fine last time?
I mean, EGM is a very strong Leona, and I think the trick to that lane matchup is that when Leona ease in on somebody, that person usually gets black shielded, and what Leona usually does, she goes on the other person. So she ease in, one person gets black shielded, the other one gets Q'd stunned, and then ulti stunned, and that's usually the Leona's engage. And the trick is basically to never stack on top of each other. So if Leona does E onto one person, the other person can't get stunned. That's usually the trick to playing against it, and we'll see if Direwolves can kind of pull that off. And I think a lot of times if Leona does over engage, the Lucian culling and the Morgana ulti can actually be very punishing. So we'll see how that lane matchup goes.
Yeah, and you were talking as well about the fact that if they engage from range as well, I mean, you've got the culling, which can hit from relative safety here as well in the back line. And we saw that King just played so well self-peeling with that Relentless Pursuit and being able to lock down the kills without putting himself in danger. And we'll see what's going to happen. But as far as the engage is concerned, Legacy, do you think that they're going to be going for sort of a mid-game strategy yet again with sort of having Lissandra here with the Frozen Tomb, massive amounts of engage with the Cataclysm as well?
I think they will definitely look for a mid-game team fight. I mean, when it gets to late game, when Nautilus gets big, and Sion gets big, their tankiness and disruption in the front line is going to be very hard to engage on.
Yeah, well, it's true. But ladies and gentlemen, game 2 about to start very, very soon. Let's put it back to the casters.
And welcome back, everyone. We're about to get into the second game here between Legacy and Dialves. The pastry time here with Papa Smithy, and a win up for Dialves for game 1. Have to be feeling strong moving into the next one.
And top Nautilus, that's what's shocking out. We expected Legacy to be throwing the curveballs, maybe leaving up all those priority champions in the first game was a curveball, but top Nautilus now. Dialves with the big curveball. Just thinking about it, I mean, it's a very tanky champion, of course, can stack health, be pretty good against the turret dives, but can he 1v2? Because that's what I'd do if I was Legacy.
Cool, I guess we're going to find out here. Perfection does struggle sometimes in a lane swap, but Nautilus is his champion here in game 2. Dialves kind of throwing Perfection crazy champions all day, and they're up against so far with his Hecarim. That, of course, is never seeing the light of day again here in the playoffs, you have to think. But instead, he's got Nautilus this time, and Legacy have kept some different champions, but a very similar looking comp, you have to think.
The one thing I want to see is, are we going to see a different style of level 1? We saw very defensive level 1 coming out in the first game, not even scouting for a potential Sion Suicide level 2 camp. In this case, of course, it's a jungle Sion, so probably wasn't want to die in the jungle, even though, of course, he'd retain his buffs, but not the same incentive when it comes to teleporting to lane. The lane swap is what I thought they'd be considering, but when you don't see those wards behind the inner turret, usually suggests no lane swap.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll just move in. We actually have Tallywacker already in the top side of the map, so maybe Legacy are just swapping and hoping that Perfection joins them up there, but Nautilus sticking in the middle of the map for now, and we might see this a lot here develop over this best of 5. Dialves in general love their standard lanes, and Legacy, I think, going to try and do anything they can to swap on Perfection.
And so the reason that I brought up the fact that I didn't expect to swap is without those aggressive wards, you don't know what lanes the enemy are going to, so you don't have the extra information to have the people in their right lanes. Of course, as Sion, who's going to probably start a camp, he doesn't really care where the lanes are because he can just teleport to them, but Lucian and Morgana, as you can see on your mini-map, are very aggressively positioned to the bot, and it looks like we'll get the swap the Legacy are looking for and force Nautilus into 1v2.
And Perfection actually going to start on the Raptors. I think teaming up with Ari here just to give her a little bit of experience, but does Riptide away? No, it's actually going to go to Perfection, so he'll pick up a little bit of extra jungle farm here.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the Sion passive. He's definitely not going to be able to kill this mega camp. I do not think this is possible.
Well, we'll have to find out. He's already taken the Riptide. He's moving back and forth, trying to leash him a little bit here. He's going for it. Riptide has been buffed recently, of course, he's a much better jungler, but Perfection might just prove you wrong here. He looks to be taking the camp away.
Today I learned.
Yep, Nautilus can solo that camp without a smite. Doesn't need it.
Needed a little bit of help from the mid laner, but is able to be done. I thought with the Rampage, I knew Hecarim could do it. Of course, Sion has the passive, but just a bit of help from your mate. A nice bit of leashing, and you get level 2.
And Perfection might look to teleport somewhere. He could just go top, I guess. Now the lane swap's happening. I thought Dialves had sniffed it out, but they moved the duo into the bottom, so Perfection might be forced to the swap. Chuchu's going in aggressive Egypt. Another level 2 gank. Sharp getting locked in again. Minky Whale comes in. The ignite is enough, and first blood goes to Chuchu's, but Minky does fall to the minions.
The reapplication of the ignite was enough to take him down, but it is a trade kill. Sion, funnily enough, can come into the mid lane and get a bit of experience, and not a lot gotten for a lot of resources committed to the mid by Legacy.
I mean, a bit awkward that it was a trade, but exactly what Legacy wants to be doing, and this is the biggest difference and the reason why Legacy want to lane swap in this matchup. It's not just Perfection. He's now 1v1 in his lane, but unlocking E-Jim's aggression and letting him roam is exactly where he wants to be.
With the Annie lock in the first game, that's what we expected, was the lane swap and the roam. I mean, still plenty of stuns. Another champion who has stuns available at level 1 is Leona. It was a very nice roam coming through, I believe, maybe even another aggressive level 2. But the result is positive for Legacy, but as a trade, not exactly ideal. Maybe this is just preying upon Sharp. They know he's not as comfortable on Ahri as he is on champions like Xerath. So just going for a bit of aggression.
Yeah, especially Pre-6, a bit easier to gank, but Legacy now will rejoin their duo lane into the top side and start pushing down that turret to Perfection. We'll get some experience in CS, actually already level 3 early on, so not doing too badly. And Minky down the bottom, pretty even on CS, but a bit behind on experience.
Have to remember, of course, that he entered lane level 2, so doesn't need a lot of experience to ping that level 3. Doing just fine on a lane swap. The thing you can consider from the Nautilus top is he's very, very tanky, has all those extra health, has defensive health scaling from his W shield, so can just navigate laning phase just fine. Not going to have a lot of range CS, so certainly no Maokai in a 1v2, but he'll do fine.
He will just pop that Riptide, use it back and forth, has the shield if he needs it, and can threaten with a hook, especially if someone comes to gank, but is looking to max that Riptide, it seems like. So it makes a lot of sense, given the recent buffs to the ability.
Absolutely. Specifically lowering the cooldown. The scaling cooldown gets it down to 6 seconds, I believe, and what used to be a 10-second flat cooldown. So more CC for a Nautilus. That's what everyone was looking for, Patient Time, but that's what they got.
And obviously as the jungle pick, a bit more consistent damage, just a bit stronger there, but in the top lane, very similar sort of thing as Sharp. Again, another aggressive look by Carbon. That's the third, I think, including EGM's level 2 round.
I mean, in a lot of ways, Direwolves got an easy laning phase and all their standard champions. They were not pressured at all in Game 1, and that's completely changed in Game 2. Already the second visit by multiple members to that mid lane, and just trying to prey upon Sharp. Chuchus, he just never had room to carry. He took that cleanse instead of Ignite, didn't have the kill pressure needed, couldn't get a snowball in mid. You can see Legacy, they want to get Chuchus ahead this time.
No, but Soulstrike's actually down to the bottom, looking to dive Minky. Well, we've got a dive brewing in the top as well, so Chuff are going to start things off, but he's going to get bound. Minky had a stun, but can't do anything else, and Soulstrike gets the next kill. Top lane, though, Perfection looking to go down, and will go, no, just safe for now. Carbon flashing forward, going to try and auto in Perfection. 8 a potion there, will go down to Carbon's Q, though, just enough there, and 2 different dives and 2 dead top laners.
Yeah, but with 3 Legacy members coming to the top, this should be a very fast dragon coming through from the Direwolves. Not known for their early dragons. We already talked about that statistic in the first game, but there's no real way for them to contest. Even Ahri coming to make it completely academic. First dragon to Direwolves.
Yeah, Carbon and Tally will get the answering tower, though, it looks like, so are going to take that out. Turret will go down. The first one falls to Legacy. First dragon, though, is going to go over to Direwolves. So for all the chaos there in the lane, so it managed it very well on the Direwolves.
Just 2 very strong team fighting comps. That's what's coming through from both teams. You don't necessarily see a huge scaling advantage in one way or the other. Direwolves are fiercely 2-threat comp, depending on what Perfection builds, but you can only do so much damage on a Nautilus. Probably going to be full tank and cooldown reduction from the top. Soulstrike's, the decimating smash max from the jungle is deceptive in how much base damage it does. So definitely an early level sign going to be damage relevant, but later into the game, it'll start to fall away. Whereas on the other side, Irelia scales excellently in terms of damage to the late game. Lissandra does just fine, but of course, Irelia, Lissandra, and Sivir, you take that over what Direwolves are putting out.
Minky, very nice, actually soaking experience, I think, or maybe waiting for someone else to come along. Is down a level so far, so doesn't really want to fight Perfection 1v1, and Ejim is rotating over, but no ganks forthcoming just yet.
I mean, with the passive actually that Nautilus has, with the staggering blow passive, you get a bit of extra auto attack damage, so he can last hit pretty well compared to someone like Aurelia. Both of them good at last hitting under turret, and they're trying to prey upon Perfection, but so far, he's navigating this 1v2.
Yeah, Ejim's here again, and Carbon looking to join into the party as well. We'll find a ward there with the Raptor Sense, I believe, and Ejim, I love this build from him. It makes a lot of sense. We saw Tegan do it recently in a late OPL match. Very fast boots of mobility.
Yeah, early Moby boots, but he's not in the bottom lane. So in terms of bottom lane pressure, Lucian Morgana getting a free laning phase, and now Taliwaka getting zoned in the bottom. As Sivir, you do have a lot of ranged wave clear with the bouncing blade, with the boomerang blade, but for now, having to stay far back.
Yeah, and actually in the mid, Chuchus is going in. It looks like does ulti on the Sharp. Ejim's here again, and Ignite is going to be enough for a clean kill this time.
Sharp must feel like Ignite is up every time there's a dive coming through, but it pays off the mobility boots by snowballing this mid advantage. Suddenly 2-0 is Chuchus. They're trying to unlock their potential of their 38% kill participation assassin mid lane.
And a great last pick here for Chuchus. It's just so easy to lock down the Ahri once you get on top of her with the ultimate. And Sharp, you can tell, feeling defensive in this lane. Goes back. His first buy after 2 Doran drinks for their health is a Negatron cloak.
I mean, with recent changes to Ahri, of course, Abyssal Scepter used to be a good item. Now that all her ranges are around 600 range, it is an excellent item. And the damage threat, it's coming through. It's largely magic damage that's coming through from these ganks between the Sunlight procs and the spells from Ejim and Chuchus' general damage. Lissandra's a very good answer to Ahri because Ahri's all about mobility. She can juke skill shots. You can't juke that Frozen Tomb.
No, that big ulti will not be stopped there. It's Perfection farming quite happily, actually, ahead of Minky by a fairly substantial amount there in the top side. Chuchus will return. Morellonomicon has already been completed for him. So, again, erring on the side of a bit more aggression as far as that choice goes. And Minky getting zoned by a Nautilus.
I mean, the crazy thing about top lane, though, is that this is with no turret to defend to. He's actually been able to hold the wave long enough to build up a 20 CS advantage. That's excellent play.
It is here. Chuchus again. Sharp does flash instantly there. Doesn't want to get ultied again. Didn't even have it. Although Carbon did EQ in trying to get the knock-up with the ulti. But Sharp safe for now, but no flash and no ulti right now.
And the cute thing is there's no flash available at all from either Carbon or Chuchus. Not really kill pressure.
No, but Carbon now going to rotate to the bottom side. Maybe going to entertain a dive here. Will get spotted by a ward, so probably unsuccessful on this particular adventure. But Chuffer lining up a binding, wants to try and take it. Ejim now, the top lane turret, has pushed in there as on perfection. Going to start using that Riptide and really pushing the minion wave in.
Why that last gank was significant though, Peichan. Why I sounded surprised the fact that they were able to basically bluff Sharp's flash. Now he doesn't have flash. The next time that gank comes around, the Frozen Tomb's available, the Cataclysm is available, even Flash available for Choo-Choo's. It's going to be a dead Ahri.
Yeah, I mean, this is Choo-Choo's thing. He wants to get around, roam through the map, just kind of keep Ahri locked down and be Lissandra. She's a great early to mid-game control mage, and right now Choo-Choo's at 2-0, looking for a bit more of a carry performance this time.
I mean, control is what Legacy have around this mini-map. Basically, Carbon can do whatever he wants because every time Sharp has gone, what, a couple of Teemo's length away from his tower, has been ganked repeatedly. So he's going to have to be so defensive in this laning phase. And Sion, unless he's going to be going for lane ganks, doesn't have that much gank pressure. He's very good in skirmishes and 2v2s and 3v3s in fights that are already happening, but he's certainly no Jarvan when it comes to early ganking.
No, it does have a Cinderhawk though, so getting a bit tankier there and just sort of clearing through his jungle, but like you mentioned, can't really influence his lanes as much as the big early pressure jungle like Jarvan. Chuffer down the bottom is hanging out, looking for potential binding, but Ejim is threatening them off. King does have a good CS lead, but Taliwaka has been answering back now, just pushing him with the Sivir and Soul Strikes, running to the bottom and actually wants a gank, but everyone else is already out of the way.
Yeah, they heard this. Of course, the sound chime comes through. They know what to expect. That was the most obvious place for a gank. So just back away.
Yeah, smart stuff there. Perfection even trained towards his turret there, looking for a potential teleport for that gank, but none forthcoming. It's not quite home guard Hecarim, but Nautilus pretty good as far as CC goes in a gank.
In terms of a gank timing, that's not actually a bad one. You might think, okay, but they just walked away. The Sion, came in as a freight train, did nothing. Hilarious, but nothing gotten. Notice that it's 1 minute till Dragon. This is the time when you start to set up wards. Now they've suddenly got the minion wave pushed in. It opened up time to get some Dragon minions, warding. So still a smart bit of jungle pathing coming through from the Direwolf.
Perfection. With that early camp, that experience lead has just been so useful in the early stages of this game. Sharp continuing to try and clear out, but Shooters actually might even die. Very cute, though. Just moving in and then backing out with a Glacial Path.
You have to think that Minkibo does not have a lot of experience in this matchup. Again, opened up by recent buffs to Nautilus, recent changes. That's the reason why we start to see Nautilus in any lane. Mostly been favored as support. We saw one jungle. Now finally seeing the top Nautilus. He has so much CC, does some great things in a team fight, but his laning phase is largely untested.
I mean, the interesting thing to me is in a team fight, who is he locking down as Choo-Choo's looks in there? Ejim posturing aggressively as well. Actually forces Chuffer to use both the ulti and the Black Shield, so will be down for this Dragon, which has now reappeared.
I mean, to me, it's going to be peel duty. Direwolves, they can initiate things, but they're so much stronger when they're peeling for either the consistent damage of Ahri and Lucian. Both of them are short-range mages and AD carries respectively, but with the bevy of CC between Soul Strikes and Perfection, maybe that'll be enough to keep these consistent damage dealers alive. As Legacy, they're looking to answer the first Dragon.
All those aggressive ultis, they will get their first Dragon, so do pick that up there after forcing the Wolves out of lane, but Direwolves pretty happy to get the first one here in Legacy. They'll even it up, but it's all good right now, and 1,000 gold ahead, nothing major, and again, the Direwolves long laning phase continuing to farm, protecting those turrets.
I mean, it's a very smart move from Legacy, because they understand that Sharp's not going to be poking his head out, still doesn't have flash available. That's what you do to translate your early pressure. You know the enemy laner is going to be playing defensively, so Dragon suddenly becomes less and less of a risk. They pick it up, and it's all square.
And Perfection actually going a bit aggressive with his build. Rod of Ages appears to be the first choice that he wants. Hasn't quite finished it yet. Going to be a pretty reasonable time for that, probably around the 15-minute mark or so, but going very aggressive here, getting a little bit of AP scaling and some tankiness as well.
It's a bit like the Maokai approach, I think, because, I mean, he does have a lot of AP ratios on his abilities, and he basically doubles scales on his Titan's Wrath shield with this build. Riptide, of course, scales on AP, but significantly Titan's Wrath, the defensive scaling of health and then the offensive scaling of the percentage damage on auto attacks. So it does fit him well. When we saw a bit of noise years ago, as in the bottom lane.
Yeah, Chopper actually, Black Shield will keep him safe, but Ejim will ride in anyway. Taliwaka gets in with a fleet of foot, but now the ports are coming through. Minky coming through, but Tally's actually going to spell shield the depth charge. Perfection coming in for a little bit of CC, but Minky going to dive back in onto King. King's forced to flash away now. Perfection in trouble, actually gets CC'd up by the Zenith Blade. Minky flashes forward for the equilibrium strike, and Taliwaka wants the last hit, but can't get it.
The Boomerang Blade not quite available for Taliwaka, so they can't pick up the exit kill on Perfection as well. The use of the Riptide there by Perfection, of that ultimate, they should have communicated better. They should have communicated that Sivir still had Spell Shield available, because that massive cooldown, the CC coming through, was for naught.
Yeah, I mean, would have been fine on Minky teleporting in there as well. Looks like this tower is going to go down. Soul Strike's trying to defend, but can't quite do so, and it will fall. There's 2 for 0 now, actually, on Legacy, taking those turrets.
So that Rod of Ages does come through, despite all the shenanigans. 14 minutes, so 24 minutes, that's when we expect the 10-minute transformation to come through. With all this aggression, they're continuing it. Carbon wants this blue, but we see multiple members coming from Direwolf.
Yeah, Sharp coming in. Actually, there's ult over the wall. Blue does go to Sharp, but Carbon will flash to safety.
All right, still, you use a flash. That's still something from the Direwolves perspective, and they secure the buff on the person they wanted it on. So Direwolves, not bad.
Yeah, they'll take it. A small win there as Sharp returns to his lane. Actually bought the Abyssal Scepter quite recently, so it does have that going for him. But Choo-Choo's now with the Morella Nomicon to start, and with the needlessly large rod done as well.
I mean, Choo-Choo's definitely has the better itemization for teamfight damage. He has the cooldown reduction, which is what Sharp would have wanted to buy, but just not been able to because of all the pressure, been forced into a more bursty build. Ari really starts to peak when she gets towards 40% CDR and then can start stacking the ability power. If you just stick around with 0% CDR, only 10% from the blue buff, you're gated by cooldown so much more.
Yeah, Minky well here actually fighting Perfection, but Perfection still winning here with the Rod of Ages. Minky answers back nicely, but Minion's going to help out. Hook even landing as well, and Minky trying to dodge around with the Blade Surge, but buying time for Carbon, who's come around as well. Now moves in with the slow. Going to save the ulti for as long as he can. Perfection, though, very dead, and Minky well gets the kill.
I mean, just weird to see Perfection opting into that trade. Didn't have teleport, didn't have flash. There was nothing really to fight about. Could have just backed away. He was already doing a wonderful job earlier in the game, holding the wave under this turret, denying CS from Minky. Well, he's still winning in CS, which is a needless death.
Maybe thought he could kill him, was getting quite aggressive as Sharp. His turret under threat. Now they will be able to take it. Good rotational play here from Legacy with Tallywacker already having the Infinity Edge done, and King freezing for a bit of extra farm in the bottom lane gives so much space to the Legacy
You just
side.
wonder, where was this Legacy in Game 1? This is the Legacy we saw on Monday night. This is the Legacy we expected in Game 1. They picked a rotational early to mid power spike comp, looking for picks and never execute upon it. But in this game, with the Sivir for rotations, with the high ganking jungler like Jarvan, they look much their old form.
And plenty of pressure from Choo-Choo's as well. That's the other big thing for Legacy, is that Choo-Choo's just such a strong playmaker for this team. But King is still farming up. Nautilus going to get tankier. Sion, of course, even from the jungle will get tankier. And Ari, like you mentioned, does need a few more items. The scaling is interesting between the two sides. You might slightly favor the Wolves, but at this point, they're starting to fall further and further behind.
I mean, the issue is, we mentioned before, how does Nautilus teamfight? We're expecting him to peel for his 2 damage threats. One of those damage threats is pretty far behind.
Tougher getting flashed on, though. The ulti moving in as well. Black Shield not enough, and Choo-Choo's gets himself a 3rd kill.
I mean, so things look so much better when Choo-Choo's and Carbon are picking off supports, mids, whoever they can in the enemy jungle. It's back to old Legacy form. But, we mentioned the fact that the Nautilus is probably going to be peeling. They've got 2 consistent damage threats. So, I mean, this Direwolves team, even though it can, is probably going to be on the back foot most of this game. That seemed to be fine in the first game, but this is Legacy really returning to their old form, pushing upwards aggressively. Look at the pink wards they've been able to put down and maintain in this mid around the dragon area. You have to think they got the first dragon, but it doesn't feel like Direwolves will be able to pass their own base, their own side of the jungle, the blue side or the red side, and get towards any of the future dragons, at least at this point.
And Choo-Choo's returns to his lane. Blue buff still on him as well. Should be up, or mostly still up for the next dragon fight here, but Azonius has been completed, and we talked about team fight potential coming through from Choo-Choo's early items. He is very ready for this next dragon fight.
I mean, they've basically got 4 frontliners at this point. Jarvan and Aurelia always going to be diving in. Lissandra has potentially 5 seconds of untargetability between the ultimate, the Frozen Tomb on the self-cast, and the Zhonya's. I mean, Sivir, she's pretty much in the front lines, only a 500 range auto attacker herself. They're going to be diving in, and it'll be interesting to see whether Perfection and Soul Tracks will have enough peel to keep Lucian and Ahri alive.
Well, they're going to have to, because like you've said, it's the only real threats here is the Direwolves continue to get farm around, but the dragon is back up, and Direwolves, I think intelligently, are just not even going to try and contest.
There's just no way to do it. They don't even have teleport for a few more seconds. The pink ward's down, the 3rd of the pink wards around this dragon. Legacy, everything they've done this game is about bullying behind Sharp and having Sharp on the back foot, and then finally opening up Choo Choo's, not on a true assassin, but on a pseudo-assassin, in this case on Lissandra, to really influence this map. And their map control, game on game, has gone from minimal to just complete control this game.
Yeah, and even at the early level ones, with Egypt getting to roam, like so much of what Legacy have done this game has already been a massive improvement for them game to game here. So looking good so far, but the Dials plenty of room to try and make some space here. And again, they've looked surprisingly good. Not the late game team we think of. That's usually Legacy, but Dials have had some pretty long games. Again, with the way they like to play the laning phase quite extended, they just go a little later. And when they start getting a lead, they almost never let go.
They just have wonderful mechanical skill, Dials. I mean, look, despite how this game has gone 2-6, and just the pressure we've already spoke about. Actually, Choo Choo's.
Yeah, Choo Choo's going to have to ult himself, but does get CC'd. Just able to in the nick of time, and does have his zombies as well. Will activate it as Carbon Stove in, but there's no one else really here. Q, from Sharp will kill him, and now Egypt going to get Flash Charm as Ari gets a double. Egypt might make it 3 here as King going to get aggressed, but he'll get the next kill, and outnumbered there on the bottom side. Tallywacker will get a turret. Might even die, though, gets slowed there by Soul Strikes. It's forced to use the ulti in a crucial misstep there for Legacy.
And Dials will be hoping, on their fans especially, that is a preview of future team fights. It's fighting around their consistent damage dealers. With Nomicon completed, Ari is that consistent damage dealer she needs to be. Lucian, King. The one thing we wanted to mention, CS values, 30 CS up in top, good CS in the bottom as well. Minky, taking a trade that doesn't look like it's going to go with the Riptide. Their carries are doing very well. Their mechanical skill is never denied. Dials are not out of this game.
Perfection takes a little too much damage, though. Moves back in, pops the Titan's Wrath. Just for a bit of extra shield damage. And Perfection really wrecking Minky and CS as well. Was up 30 or so as Minky came back into this lane, but we do have a replay.
So watch the replay again. This is a wonderful binding coming through from Chuff on his second Morgana game. 5 seconds of stasis is effective, but Carbon does not need to initiate. The EQ takes him a long way, but the ultimate doesn't contribute anything. It was already very low health. They're going to clean up E-Gym as well. That undoes a lot of the great work that Legacy were doing earlier, and suddenly it's only a few thousand gold and certainly no kills in the advantage for Legacy.
Yeah, just such a weird 3v3 for Legacy to want to take because, like you said, there's only 2 damage deals on Dials, and they were both in that exchange.
I mean, it's the communication, right? The communication of that had to be a back thing. The moment that Choo Choo's was caught, they needed to communicate that they can't choose to fight this 3v3. If there were 2 other members, if it was one of Lucian and Ari and 2 other people, absolutely opt into it. But in that situation, not respecting the damage potential from Ari Lucian, they paid for it.
And the gold lead evens up a bit now. Dials behind only about 3,000 gold. Still down massively in turrets, and Dragon, of course, being down there as well. So Legacy looking good so far, but with missteps like that, they just can't afford that. Perfection's getting stronger. King and Ari are powering up, especially with a couple of kills that they just got here. And I feel like Dials are the one team where when you get ahead of them, you just never want to give it back.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. They're so strong in laning. If you hold them down the laning phase, that's the only time that you can really start to snowball upon them. They had started that snowball legacy, but it's starting to fall away, and timings are coming through for Perfection in particular. He's about 2.5 minutes away from his 10-stack Rod of Ages, when the scaling really gets crazy on that Titan's Wrath, and just on his whole kit, it does scale well with AP. The item timing is there for Irelia. She does have her Trinity Force. But again, we don't know a lot about how Nautilus is going to scale. That's the big question. We know that he's going to be a frontline tanky force, but I guess I'm not really sure how to judge his item. But is it just going to be full tank for me? Is it going to be the Frozen Heart for a bit of cooldown reduction? We don't know for sure. Irelia, though, Trinity Force, Merc Treads, looking good.
Yeah, getting going finally. As we do have a pause in the game, so hence why we're back here. Minky getting his Trinity Force quite late. I like that you bring him up because I think he just got it maybe a few minutes ago. And around the 22 minute mark? That's very late for Minky, who's honestly somehow been denied by Nautilus.
I mean, it's a decent part-time, but it's definitely not good. It's not Minky Whale tiers. He's been excellent at picking up those big pickups very early in the game. Hasn't been able to do it. I mean, as a comparison, in our first game, Perfection, Spectre's Cowl, Boots, and Trinity Force at 19 minutes. So that lets you know that 22 minutes into the game, maybe 20 minutes, I guess we lost a bit of perspective as to when that item was completed. Just a little bit later there for Minky Whale.
Yeah, I mean, Perfection looking fine so far. You have to think the Dials are at least comfortable in this spot. They end up behind early surprisingly often, I have to say, as for a team that usually wins by getting ahead in their lanes and snowballing. But they've grown, I think, steadily as a team throughout the OPL. You can see that in Game 1's plan, even here in Game 2 as well. I don't know what's going to happen, but if they're just comfortably farming with the lead being slimmed down like that, probably going well for them.
I mean, the reason why they die a lot is that they play aggressively, and then that's the thing about people like Perfection and King. They push their waves and they play under the enemy turret. They're balancing harass with CSing. If you play under the enemy turret, you can get ganked, and that's why you see he might have the most kills in the OPL King, but he has plenty of deaths as well. His average deaths is about 4 deaths a game, which is very high for an AD carry. As a comparison point, Taliwaka has a 2.2 average death per game to a 4 from King. So they play aggressively, they push lanes. That's how they build up CS advantage, but that's how they also get picked off and start to fall behind in early laning phase.
Yeah, and they've really just haven't in this game, in the last one as well, but didn't hurt them too much in the last one with the Hecarim. Nautilus definitely a wild card here, but we'll see how that shakes out. Sharp powering up as well as we do hop back into the game. We could see EGM going for Righteous Glory, it looks like. So a bit of initiation potential from his support build. And Taliwaka with his Zeal and King working on a Phantom Dancer second yet again.
You say Righteous Glory though, Pastry Time. The only item that builds out of 2 of those braces is in fact the Warmox. It's probably not going to be the Warmox. Maybe it's just going to be a bit of cost-effective health, but it's a very interesting double bracer build coming through.
Carbon now going to move through as well. Dragon back up in a minute 35 as through the jungle. Choo-Choos will come. EGM will spot Chuffer, but the pink ward going to be able to defend them off. Soul Strike's here as well, trying to bait him in. Soul Strikes realizes what's going on. Minky here now as well. They really want to defend their wall, but it's 3v4 right now. Soul Strike's looking to get locked up. There does go down there as EGM actually gets the kill, but Carbon taking too much damage. Back in the middle, Perfections come through as well. Moving through there, gets Taliwaka with the hook, locks him up as well, and Carbon will go down to Sharp King off to the side, getting chunked out by Choo-Choos, but Perfection still tanky, and that's 1 for 1.
1 for 1. King did so much damage with the culling on the backline. Already has Phantom Dancer and Infinity Edge. Big item advantage compared to Sivir. They weren't able to team fight aggressively because Perfection wasn't in the front line to start the fight. That's probably why we saw the go button initiated by Legacy. It's an even trade, but they might also lose this inner turret.
Choo-Choos, again, threatening with that claw, but is going to back off. The 5th turret does go down. That's a major point here in this game, is that Dial's still without a turret. No outers felled. In fact, no turrets at all.
It's worth noting, though, that at 5.6, those inner turrets don't give as much gold as they used to. They're just for the strategic value of pushing your minions in aggressively, opening up red buff control for Legacy on this Dial's red side jungle. The gold's not necessarily there, but as you mentioned, 0 turrets to 5. That's a big lead here for Legacy.
Yeah, and if Dives want to use their CC with the Ahri, with the Nautilus, get some pick potential down and start fighting, and they do skirmish exceptionally well as far as their team goes. Not able to do any of that, just kind of forced to push the lanes out, try and pressure some turrets, and again, a very slow start to this game for Dials, and the Dragon is back up. Legacy will be back in time after shopping, but the Dials are setting up for it as well.
I mean, they have pick potential, but because this Dials team is mostly about peeling for King and Sharp, they've not been playing aggressively. Soul Strikes gets initiated on.
Minky well, though, could get caught out as well. Actually got ulted there by Sion. Now Minky will get crushed down as Soul Strikes gets the first kill. King gonna move in to try and take out Carbon, and Sharp's aggressively moving in. Does get moved back, but Sharp gets locked up massively there by Choo-Choos. He ults himself in the middle. Tally gets a triple kill, and Choo-Choos fighting in. There's the triple for Sivir. Another kill gonna move through as Sivir finally goes down to Morgana, but it's 2 for 1 right now. Soul Strike's the only one left alive, and Choo-Choos, so much work done with that ulti.
Choo-Choos with the heroic initiation. Soul Strikes will finally die. It's a delayed quadra kill for Soul Strikes. He might actually be able to pick up EGM. No, takes the Dragon aggro himself. Choo-Choos, that was a heroic initiation. The self-ult Frozen Tomb. He already had an extra needlessly large rod for damage, and man, it showed.
Looks like they're ulting down as well. Want to make sure they can get this Minky Well actually coming, maybe even just to help tank it and do a bit of extra damage. Soul Strike's not available yet, but doesn't want the Dragon to get stolen away. And crucially, Legacy use a lot for it, but they get their 3rd Dragon.
And look, you snowball a member. That Legacy, they chose Choo-Choos as they always do. And he shows you why, but the game-winning play. So we'll see the replay. Remember, this starts really good for the Dial Wars, but wait for the grouping that really unsettles them. So at this point, Choo-Choos is standing in the back. Look how all of Dial Wars are basically standing up on top of each other, and the self-cast Frozen Tomb completely wrecks them. Taliwaka, even though he's very low on health, gets the Boomerang Blade and the Bouncing Blade out. And it does work, and everyone dies instantly. You need to watch your grouping. There's short range that we already mentioned it. 600 range Ahri, 500 range Lucian. If you're standing on top of each other, you can see what work Choo-Choos can do.
Yeah, I like it. Taliwaka's kind of looking, going, oh yeah, 4-man snare into 4-man ulti. I've seen that one before, maybe sometime last year in a certain semi-final, but that's the plays that Legacy need to try and take it, and King actually kind of getting chased out of his own jungle will be okay, but Legacy, again, back with the movement speed, ready for their rotations and starting to take control back of this game.
King needs to start backing away. There's a lot of people on the minimap.
Yeah, actually does dodge the ulti there. Now moving in, Tallywhacker has popped his ultimate. The Xenoblade Wilmer's Carbon, though, will knock him up. Gets the Chilling Smite down as well, and an easy kill for Tallywhacker.
I mean, they've put so much effort into warding this red side jungle. They have the inner turret. You need to respect all the pressure they have. They definitely not done by King, and he falls down.
Awesome dodge, though, but the ultimate cannot be dodged here for Minky. Chopper gonna line up a binding. Actually misses, unfortunately, but Legacy don't care. They're pushing 4-man in a perfection. Not able to come down. No teleport. They'll get the inhib turret. Soul Strikes and Sharp should be able to defend the inhibitor, and Soul Strikes actually going to ult in on top of Egypt. Tallywhacker, though, going to turn around. Choo-Choo's locks him up, and Soul Strikes just not that tanky from the jungle. Another kill going over to Legacy.
They won't be able to pick up the inhibitor, but the inhibitor turret breaking the base is a significant thing for Legacy. Another game with very short-ranged champions. 500 range Sivir. Choo-Choo's even lower range than that on the Lissandra. Breaking the base for these short-range teamfight teams is always one of your main win conditions. And Legacy, Minky leads 2 members on a merry journey, and they break the base.
Yes, 6-1 in turrets. 4,000 gold ahead and 3-1 in Dragons. Everything going right for Legacy's, again, very mid-game centric comp, and it's nothing particularly about champions I have to think about picks. It's just the way they played out the early game. And they've just, again, went from game 1 to game 2 and look almost like a completely different team.
I mean, it's about picks, but not in the way it was in game 1. It's all about the pick potential onto Ahri and just the aggressive use of the likes of Lissandra, Jarvan. So much guaranteed CC, so much synergy between those 2 picks. And Sharp, he's got a good kill score now, but this all came much later after all the seeds of discontent, after all the pressure advantage that Legacy had that's led to these 2 turrets in the bottom lane. That's led to the 6-1 global turret score. This map has been run by Legacy and by Choo-Choo's being opened up by first the roam of Ejim and then the jungle pathing coming through from his good mate Carbon.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the pairing that we always talk about, Choo-Choo's and Carbon, and I have to think a lot of Carbon's early game pressure really dictates how Legacy play the rest of their game. Ejim as well, able to get aggressive in the early stages, such a crucial part of how they win games of League of Legends, but continuing to posture aggressively. CS looking good for Direwolves, actually winning in both top and bottom lane there for the AD carry.
Not
but
much of a surprise.
Mid lane, a little bit different. Choo-Choo's quite far ahead there.
And that's just the reality of Ahri having to stand back so far on this lane. It can be a difficult laning phase against for Lissandra against Ahri, just because they can, she's a short-range mage herself, so they can trade damage. But when you have all that global pressure coming through, that's what it buys you. It buys you 70 SCS advantage and map control.
Yeah, and that first ulti in that gank that came through for the mid lane, actually was earlier than that. Ejim roaming in level 2.
Yep.
And just with a snare there coming for Choo-Choo's was enough to really set this lane up well. And that's the play that we want to see get going on Legacy's side if Legacy are going to win games. It's it's kind of a dumb pump, but the Choo-Choo's train, when it gets rolling, it's real good.
I mean, that's what happens when you have a superstar mid laner. If you get them going, you get them going.
Perfection in trouble, though. Now going to take way too much damage. Carbon even going to ult him. Ejim tanking in the back. Not too bad, but does get hooked away. Perfection actually gets the kill and gets away. Now Sharp going to move back in as well, but Choo-Choo's is coming in. Does pop the snare. Sharp flashing away. Soul Strike's getting low as Minky going to try and get him. Doesn't get the kill. Choo-Choo's actually comes back in, but King's got the next kill. Good flash W, but he QSS's out, but too much damage coming through. Soul Strikes finally falls, and a 3 for 3, interestingly. Make it 4 for 3 because Sion, he'll die eventually.
It was a very close fight, though. Probably the Goldie that was the big factor there. But Tallywhacker able to freely auto-attack behind his tanks, whereas King, he was full health for most of that fight because he was just denied from ever entering it, having to respect all the area control from Choo-Choo's. That's the thing about Lissandra that's deceptive. Sure, she's an assassin, but she can be a frontline tank to some degree. Go in there, sheer huge amount of AoE slow with the self-cast ult. We're going to see the replay again. They did not see this coming. So that's why Perfection gets burst down, but man, he lives a long time. That's what we've learned about this top lane Hecarim. Manages the re-engage, lives throughout the fight, but watch King and his positioning. He's still full health. He's not really able to get auto-attacks out during all this time. Tallywhacker falls low, but he's fighting behind a pseudo-tank in Lissandra, Jarvan and Aurelia, and that's why he's able to do so much more work. King eventually takes a huge burst of damage. Legacy just fighting smartly around the terrain, smarting fightly with their lineup.
And the other thing as well, you look at Tally's items now as a BF sword to add into the 3 big damage items he had in that last exchange. You look down at King, you see the BF sword, you think, okay, not too bad. QSS a bit early, but needs the defense against the Lissandra ulti. Did not have that BF sword when that fight started, so Tallywhacker just much further ahead in items as well.
He hit a very early time, and we were actually complimenting him for getting that big burst of culling damage about 6-7 minutes ago, but it's all changed. However, Sharp's looking for a pick.
Sharp trying to find something here. But no, not quite yet. Choo Choo's returns back in as well. Rabadon's now completed for him and blasting one in there for the Void stuff that's coming up as Dragon coming back up in 35 seconds here, and it will be Legacy's 4th, which of course puts the 5th Dragon timer in. Sharp posturing now. Soul Strikes, you can see, looking for the Q, but a good EQ out from Carbon. Does get hit by a binding though, will rotate in, but a great ulti from Egypt. Now going to lock down Sharp. He's forced to ulti out with a Spirit Rush, and Soul Strikes snared up as well. Now Perfection going to move back in. Choo Choo's will throw out a little bit of poke. Tallywacker eats a binding, but is safe for now, and Legacy going to get on top of this next Dragon.
Yeah, 10 seconds till the Dragon spawns. They already have 3. This isn't the 5th, but man, it puts a timer on the game if they're able to take it down. They're still getting poked around. They have some defensive wards down Direwolves, but they have to back away. They seed the Dragon, you'd have to think, given their mini-map position.
I mean, they just can't realistically fight, I don't think, at this point. A little too far behind. Just too much power on the Legacy side right now, and that's the 4th Dragon. So 38 minutes exactly will be that 5th, and Legacy, they didn't know how to win the game already, and they've already broken the base. They've got a very clear win condition now.
I mean, so many win conditions. Basically, any fight goes their way. They can either choose to finish the game or start that burn if it's in a couple or 6 minutes time. The Baron is also a realistic objective. They haven't actually forced around. They don't have any ward coverage around the Baron, so to me, it doesn't look like Baron's one of their main objectives.
No, but we'll see what does shake out here. Minky Rail has gotten tanky, but actually pretty light on items. Has been well held by Perfection all game, and doesn't even have the Randuin's completed yet. Perfection on the other side. Giant Spelt, Spectre's Cowl, Frozen Heart, and a fully charged Rod of Ages. I don't know if Nautilus can carry, but if there's ever a game to find out, it'll be this one.
Legacy are spotted out by a ward. Of course, that ward not seen by the ping, but it doesn't matter. Everyone just freshly recalled. So despite not having the insane ward coverage they have over the Dragon buff, that was what got them that Dragon buff, just a single pink's enough. Direwolves back away. Don't know how many more advantages you can see before this game's going to be over.
Yeah, and just too much damage coming through there as well. So Direwolves going to see what they can get done, but Legacy, a big stack in the top lane with the Baron buff ticking away. They're going to try and push in and end the game.
They're trying to push in. They've got a Baron buff minion wave. The minion wave in mid is still a super minion wave. So the mini-map is still working against Direwolves.
Yeah, Kingston trying to push out what he can. Shaffer looks for a binding, but doesn't find it. And the Direwolves forced to retreat back to their turret. Legacy going to come in again.
For the push to come through. They don't have the best siege comp here, only really Sivir for turret damage, and she has to really overextend to get it. So this could be a long siege. They're waiting for the minimap to work for them. Super minions in the mid starting to push out, and look at the huge minion wave in the bot.
Yeah, absolutely massive wave in the bot pushing as well. So Legacy, you know, taking their time, realize they don't have to tower dive right now, and it's the correct thing to do here. Just be patient. Let your waves do all the work for you, and eventually the Direwolves can't keep defending this 5v5.
And that doesn't mean they're not going to die. They may still look for an aggressive dive, but wait for the minion waves to make it a victory whatever you do.
Yep, and they're pushing in now. The middle lane minions walking past that inhibitor. The bottom lane almost reaching as well. There's a massive stack of minions that have started pushing in, and somebody has to leave. Minky doesn't even have his teleport to move between the lanes a little faster, and at this point it's just fast for him to run anyway.
It's actually going to be the 4th minion wave crashing on top. There's going to be 4 minion waves strong pushing onto this inhibitor turret. Not going to last very long, so Legacy just smart. They're just trying to create as much map pressure as possible, even if they're not looking for a dive.
Yeah, and Kings now use the culling, so Minky Wave going to try and cut Perfection off. Wants that minion wave to do some damage. You can see just to the left there, the super minions made it to the Nexus as well. Direwolves are running out of good options. Minky Wave might even just take the tower himself here at this point. That is such a big stack of minions, and Minky and all the caster minions take it out easily. Perfection can't do anything. It might be caught out now. E will land there for the stun by the Leona, but Perfection gonna back away. Soul Strike's in to help him, but gonna pop the ulti. Does hit a couple minions, and Ejim pretty tanky, but he's gonna get caught away. Chuffer in here as well, but there's not a whole lot of damage right here, and Choo Choo's gonna run in, actually ults himself there on top of Soul Strikes, but haven't got onto Sharp. Carbon though diving into the back. Minky Well gonna try and find him, will take out the Ari in the backline, and Lucian is tied up with Tallywacker. Choo Choo will get himself to safety. Perfection. Soul Strikes trying to get some work done. He's actually ulting onto the Lysandra there, but Perfection will get away. Dreadlines to the wall, but doesn't actually get the hit on. And now Mickey's going to chase him back. King finally arrives in. He might actually be hit just to make cleanup duty. But Chuffer's returning in, home guarding away, and a very awkward fight. And King's still moving in, but he gets tagged. That might be it. Tallywacker gets the second, and Chuffer nowhere good to go. Might make it a triple for Tally as well. And King, he almost brought it back, but that's an ace.
The re-engage was majestic. Triple kill for Tallywacker brings him up to 11-1-6. Much better this game at Legacy. Tallywacker, all of his team really living up to the expectations. And it should be 1-1 and all square 2 games in.
Yep, Sharp going to be back, but he's not enough to defend. Legacy fairly low here, but this should fall. Sharp going to try and come in. Charms up. Ejin might move in for a kill, but can't even get that. Leona so tanky does eventually fall, but the Nexus will fall with it, and Legacy are going to tie up the best of 5 1 apiece.
Best of 5, 1-1. Can't ask for much more pastry time. Much improved performance from Legacy. Their bans were on point. Their champion select, I liked it a lot more than what Dai was. They kind of picked themselves into a corner with this 2-threat comp, because if one of those threats doesn't get going, and Ari was so well held by first Ejin, then Carbon, hell, Choo-Choo's did a good job on his own. There's just not much he could do in these fights, and that's why they look so comfortable for Legacy.
Yeah, and even beyond that, not just the picks, but the ability for them just to rotate so well and just set themselves up. It, again, looked like a completely different game. The first one, Dials farming comfortably, looking fine in the second. It was just all Legacy.
I mean, getting people off their comfort champions can be really important. That's the thing. Looked a lot less comfortable on the Ari compared to the Xerath. On the one hand, he received a lot of attention, so he should have been less confident when it comes to pushing that wave. But I think we have a replay to just kind of get an idea of what came up this game, because it was definitely the polar opposite in a lot of ways to Game 1. So at this point, 4,000 gold is the lead for Legacy. They were already in a good spot. This is a long, extended fight, but the big difference is between the 80 carries and what they were able to put out. So we'll roll the tape. They go for the aggressive pick on Perfection, but you can see from his items, he's a very, very tanky man. He actually lives most of this fight. But the big difference is that King does some good damage to Ejim in the backline, then has this period where he's not doing any auto attack damage. Meanwhile, Tallywhacker, Sivir in the late game, she's not been called a hyper carry, but if she can just freely auto, she has an auto attack reset. She does a lot of damage. King finally re-engages and goes in aggressive, but the flash stun from Choo-Choo's, as was most of the case this game, is on point. The first triple kill comes through from Tallywhacker. Of course, he had a repeat act right at the end of that game, and it was a much improved Legacy across the board.
It was. I mean, Tally just doing so much work at the end of the game. Lysandra coming through as well. I mean, looking over on the other side there, Legacy, of course, winning that game, but do you feel like we learned anything about top lane Nautilus today?
I mean, it wasn't a problem that game. I just feel like if it was a different champion, if it was a champion with a bit more damage potential, I mean, it's hard to find a top laner that has a carry potential like Aurelia, unless we're talking about Hecarim, which of course was banned this game, but the Nautilus, I can see what they were trying to do. They wanted to fight around their threats. If Ari had won the laning phase, those team fights would look so much different if she had maybe a Snowball Zhonya's on top of what she already had and could position aggressively. But as two short-range champions, the Nautilus wasn't enough to peel for them, and unfortunately Legacy's comp, and specifically their warding, the difference in the warding from games 1 to 2, when I was talking about that 4th dragon, there was at least 6 to 8 wards around that dragon to secure the 4th dragon. Didn't even need that around Baron, but that's the Legacy I expected, the Legacy that rotates, the Legacy that starts to overwhelm the map aggressively and rotationally. We didn't see it Game 1, but we saw it Game 2.
And with that, the best of 5 has become a best of 3 now. It's 1 apiece in the first 2 games, and the third is all up for grabs. Don't go too far, because as we return, Dials versus Legacy, we'll be back.